former US President Donald Trump called on Americans to stand united hours after he narrowly escaped what the FBI has now called an assassination bid. In fact, Trump was speaking at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, when loud noises were heard in the crowd on Saturday evening. Trump appeared to have been struck by something in the right ear as he was speaking, and a fraction of a second later was seen ducking down to the ground, almost simultaneously swamped by security agents as a shield. In fact, Trump was then quickly escorted from the stage and into his vehicle. Just before that, had his fist clenched, with him saying, "Fight, fight," amid chants of US, US, US. Now, this imagery, according to many political experts, is now being seen as the defining moment of US presidential elections. US President and rival Biden has condemned the attack. Listen in.
Place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. And I want to thank the Secret Service and all the agencies, including the state agencies, that have been engaged in making sure that people and we have more detail to come relative to other people maybe injured in the audience. I don't have all that detail. We'll make that available to you. The Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it.
The shooter in this case, who was killed by the snipers, according to the FBI, is a 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. Now, he has been identified as a registered Republican. The motive behind the shooting, though, is not known yet. Let's tell you, a video has emerged on social media of Secret Service snipers in action after the assassin bid. One of the two snipers who were placed on the roof of a building near the rally stage is seen raising his head, having possibly spotted the shooter. The snipers then opened fire.
It's probably 5 to 7 minutes of Trump speaking. I'm estimating here. I have no idea, but we noticed the guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle.
A rifle.
We could clearly see him with a rifle, absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, "Hey, man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle." And the police are like, "Huh, what?" Like they didn't know what was going on. We're like, "Hey, right here on the roof, we can see him from right here. We see him. He's crawling."
Let me go across to Archit Sheshadri, Atlanta journalist, in fact, joining us from there in Atlanta. Archit, very good morning to you. Thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us to better draw perspective on what we know so far. So let me begin with that. As far as this entire incident is concerned, what do we know at the moment? Archit, if you can hear me, thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us here this morning on Mirror Now. Let me begin by asking you this. What do we know so far about the incident? All right, we'll try going across to Archit Sheshadri, who I understand is an Atlanta journalist joining us from there. But having said that, let's also tell you just a few minutes ago, we were also listening in to that particular reaction, because what's important here is also raising huge concerns over what is being looked at as an alleged lapse, raising questions on the Secret Service. Because an eyewitness speaking to the BBC has claimed that he was among those who'd seen the accused crawling on the roof with a rifle. I understand Archit's back with us. Archit, very good morning. Thank you very much for taking the time out. Let me begin by asking you this. What do we know so far?
Absolutely. You were talking about the security lapses, exactly what the FBI is going to be doing, looking, in fact, at what went right, what went wrong, were there lapses, could this have been prevented or acted on sooner? This all unfolded about 6 o'clock Saturday evening here. So right now it's a little bit close to 11 o'clock. So this is still very, very early in the investigation. We heard from the FBI director. So what they're going to be doing now is looking at Thomas Matthew Crooks's cell phone records, his data on his laptop, his computer, the weapon that was used. Was that a weapon that he took from his father? Was that stolen? Was that legally? Is he allowed to use it? All of that data will now be taken into consideration. Plus, the FBI will look at eyewitness sound, video from surveillance cameras in that area, and put all of that together. All of this coming on the brinks of the Republican National Convention, which take place tomorrow. That is our Monday here. It's still Sunday night here in the United States. So certainly a lot happening. The political temperatures here, just with months to go, heating up. And that is exactly the rhetoric that President Biden, in his address just a few hours ago, said Americans need to cool the temperatures down, come together united. And if there are political differences, express those at the ballot box during the elections and not by encouraging violence.
In fact, Archit, as you point that out, we'll get speaking about that front, about how this could potentially be the defining moment of the US presidential elections. But having said that, what do we know about the shooter so far? We're also given to understand reports suggest that explosives were also found at his home. Is that the case?
Yeah, there's a lot of missing parts at this point. What we do know with the 20-year-old shooter is that he was someone who was a little bit of a loner. He lived about an hour and a half away from where this rally was taking place in Butler, Pennsylvania. As we mentioned earlier, the FBI will be doing their due diligence. They're the assist-only agency. So while there may be rumors circulating, a lot of misinformation perhaps on social media, this is the FBI's job, where they will look into the evidence, look into his cell phone, his text messages, the people he had come into contact with, look into his phone records, his laptop, his browsing history, interview his parents. They're also going to be interviewing perhaps his teachers, people he went to school with. Was mental health an issue? Did he have mental health issues? Was this what was the motive? That's what President Biden at the ultimate saying, why? Why did this happen? Was this something personal? Was this more to just get attention? This, in fact, would have been his first election in November where he would be eligible to vote. He was a 20-year-old. So when he turns 21 is when he would be eligible to vote. Interestingly, he is registered as a Republican, but certain donation records show he made $15 or $20 in donations to the Democrats. So was he just unhappy that he wanted Biden to win, so he wanted to take Trump down? I mean, to hear of a potential assassination attempt in modern American history is somewhat of a rare thing. The last time something like this has happened was when Ronald Reagan was shot in the 80s. So that's more than 4 decades in. Certainly there have been impacts or attempts on Biden and Obama and Bill Clinton, but nothing to this caliber where a political candidate, a former US president, was actually injured. I mean, we see that video where he was grazed in the ear and ducked down, and the Secret Service jumping in, forming a human shield, a bunker to protect him, then whisking him away. And unfortunately, one member of the audience has died. 2 of them are still in critical condition, but certainly a huge political development here within the next 4 months. And lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, saying, we don't condone violence. We don't support violence, that anything like this should be solved peacefully and we should unite. We're not Democrats. We're not Republicans. We're Americans.
Right, Archit, and in fact, as you go on to point that about, attempts that have been made in the past, and like you've been pointing out and sharing perspective over the same, if you could draw perspective on something very similar that happened, not to the extent that we're seeing right now with Trump, as far as a bid, rather in 2016 as well.
I was here in New York City when that happened in 2016, when it was Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. So, and then, Trump had won in that election.
Right.
He ran again in 2020 against current President Joe Biden, and he lost. So if he does win, this would be his last time to be a president, because in the United States, you have limits, term limits, which of course is a 2-term limit. Going back to what you were talking about, assassination attempts, certainly the most notable ones are the assassination of former presidents Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy. We remember the motorcade when John F. Kennedy was riding along with his wife and he was shot and killed. There have been other attempts, like I mentioned earlier with Ronald Reagan. So sometimes it's politically motivated. Sometimes it's because there's so much media attention, just like some of the mass shooting that we unfortunately see in the United States,
Right.
that lone wolves or copycat attackers do these type of incidences or attacks because they know they will be remembered or martyred in the media coverage. But in this specific case, in what happened this weekend, the big questions at this hour remain the motive. Did the Secret Service thoroughly or accurately do their job? Did they handle it fast enough? Could this have been prevented? Did they not see the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, in the building? Was not enough done? So that's what the FBI is going to be doing in their investigation in the days ahead.
Arjit, as you point that out, just taking a cue from that, since we also had run a sound bite of an eyewitness saying, and I'm quoting the same, that he noticed a guy scrolling a building and he had a rifle. He was holding a rifle. We can clearly see it, and alerted authorities about the shooters, but they did nothing about it. This clearly raises big question about lapses as well. How do you read into that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the big question of this hour, in the sense of, I will I'll sort of paint the picture of the scene. There are hundreds of people at a political event at a rally, and there are Secret Service, and their job is to protect the president. Then there's local police, the local Pennsylvania from Butler, the local authorities. So you have local, state, and federal, different levels. So again, these witnesses certainly could be telling the truth, or perhaps they did mention it, but by the time that was whispered from the state to the federal to the Secret Service, by then it was too late, because if we remember that video, all of this unfolded within the first 5 minutes. So former President Trump had just gotten on the podium, talked about why he's running and important issues. He was talking specifically about illegal immigration. And before you knew what was going to happen, the bullets started spraying, and people didn't even realize, were they bullets? Were there fireworks, firecrackers? It happened so quickly. The FBI says it all unfolded within a 45 to 60 second window. So in 60 seconds, then it was pandemonium. And at that point, do people stay? Do they crouch? Do they run? Do they leave? Do they shoot cell phone video? Yes, certainly the FBI will be talking to these witnesses and reviewing the footage and asking, did investigators, did the local police, did the cops who were on the scene miss an opportunity? And if they did miss an opportunity, could there be further implications? I think that's the big question of this hour, but certainly the temperatures are high here, and Biden saying everyone needs to cool down, everyone needs to take a step back, and no matter if you're blue or red,
right,
it is not appropriate, or America will never be a place remembered for violence. And I spoke to political candidates and political pundits, and they say that this could likely give the former president an advantage. Perhaps sympathy votes. He's already leading in the polls against Biden. Could this push him over the edge, especially on the brinks of the Republican National Convention that starts Monday for us in the next 12 hours here in the US, in Milwaukee?
Right, Arjit. I appreciate you drawing more perspective as far as this given incident is concerned, and more importantly, what the implications probably perhaps will be with the elections. But for now, we'd have to leave it at that. Thank you very much once again for joining us this morning.